I'm Kate Warren with Devex here at Devex World 2018, joined with my colleague, Pete Troilo, who flew in from Manila, getting over your jet lag
Good to be here in
for
DC.
this exciting day. And Pete oversees our survey and advisory services team at Devex. Maybe something that not everyone knows that we do, so maybe I'll have you talk a little bit about that first, but in the context of, here we are at Devex World, really looking forward at the future of development and how our sector is really rapidly shifting. And we just recently actually conducted a survey that your team ran on the next generation development professional in partnership with USAID and DAI. This is actually a continuation of a survey we did a few years ago, and we are asking our community about the changes they see and how they see it impacting the skills, technologies, approaches, and really the kind of people we will need to move forward in development. Some really interesting insights. So I'd love to pick your brain about what we've learned from that survey. But first, maybe talk a little bit about the survey work that we do and our approach to this.
Absolutely. So one of Devex's greatest assets really is that we have this big network of development professionals, and we can tap into them to really understand their perspectives and opinions on different issues that have a major impact on international development. In this case, we're really asking them about their careers. I mean, there are few industries in the world that are more of a people business than international development. In this case, we're reaching out to them, and we reached out to them. We asked them sort of, about their jobs, about the skills and abilities that they're going to need in the future to really excel and thrive.
Great. And so, what did we find out in this survey? Any big takeaways?
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, Kate, there was a previous survey a couple years ago, and we started to get these impressions about things that Devex reports on all the time. That these are big changes that are happening, and they're sure to affect the average international development career.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned a lot about that, and we heard words like sustainability and localization and new technology. And certainly those things were emphasized in this iteration of the survey. But I would say the two things we looked most deeply into and that came out of the survey are, one is technology and how technology is going to revolutionize the industry, and the second is funding. This is development work needs to be properly funded. Donor agencies continue to drive the industry, but there's a lot of changes in that donor environment. So there were a lot of interesting insights in both of those areas.
So well, here at Devex World, I think technology is all around us. Mm-hmm. We just finished listening to a flash talk on blockchain. There's a lot of really cool technology being demoed. What are the technologies that people need to know or need to learn?
So in our survey, we actually asked that directly. And the first thing is 91% of the respondents said that they plan on using an advanced information and communication technology in the next few years. So that's pretty dramatic. That people are saying this is an important part of our work. This is something we're going to need to learn, whether they're in headquarters in a capital city or they're in the field. So that was really compelling. And then secondly, they did dig into sort of, what are the technologies? And a few that they mentioned were geographic information systems, so GIS. Another was big data. Yep. And another was tech integration, which I would sort of loosely define as the ability to take a technology and actually apply it to a project setting and really make an impact.
Yes, and in a session earlier today, I was talking about technology absorption. It's not just creating the technology, but really being able to absorb it.
That's exactly
really interesting. Well, you also helped lead one of our panels on funding, and we know there's a lot of disruption in the funding landscape that's changing even the kinds of organizations that you could work for, and certainly the kinds of professionals and profiles that are needed. Maybe you can give us a brief breakdown of what insights you learned from this survey as to who are these new funders and what do they look like?
So there are all these innovative models, right? I mean, and some are just very simply better known than others. The one that was most familiar among survey respondents was public-private partnership. Mm-hmm. So that's, it could be a corporation and a local government coming together, an implementing partner, then supporting that process. It could be in health, education, anything else. So our respondents felt fairly comfortable with the whole idea of the private sector coming in and supporting development programs. Where they're a little less familiar and arguably less comfortable is some of the more sophisticated models, like impact investing, which is basically private investors that are contributing a social or environmental return, but they're also seeking a profit. And the impact investment industry is growing rapidly, as we know, but there's still, I think, a lack of understanding about how that's going to impact development. And the next is blended finance, so sort of bringing different forms of finance to a development project, other more sophisticated things like development impact bonds. I think these are concepts that the broader development community still needs a bit of understanding. So I think at Devex at least, we'll continue to sort of try to explain that to them.
Yeah, well, that's part of what we're doing here today at Devex World, and we have a lot of these people in the room talking to each other almost for the first time. And I think that a lot of professionals that maybe have been working in development for decades, many of us have been doing this for a while, it's new terminology, new vocabulary can be somewhat overwhelming, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on how professionals should be viewing what could seem like a scary moment in development, but reframing this as an exciting opportunity.
Exactly. I think we're trying to get out of the echo chamber of our own world and sort of broaden our audience. That's a wave that Devex has really ridden, is to understand that the development community is changing. What is the development community? It's really broad. I would say that another very interesting finding in the survey, though, is that the softer skills are steadfastly important. I mean, and these are things that apply to any industry, but definitely international development. So, just our survey respondents told us flexibility and adaptability, cross-cultural communication. They emphasize written communication and verbal communication, the ability to work in teams, all of these things as absolutely mandatory if they want to continue to thrive and excel as a development professional.
Yeah, and I'd say that very much resonates with the many employers that we work with on the recruitment and talent side at Devex.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, Ken. I mean, you travel all around the world. You meet development professionals that are in the field. You meet them here in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of how all this sort of staffing and recruiting?
Well, definitely. I mean, I think one interesting takeaway on the soft skills is that while technical skills are critically important, when I actually talk to most employers, hiring managers, recruiters, when it comes down to somebody being successful in the role, it is those soft skills, and that's really can be the differentiator.
Sure.
So those can't get lost, and as you said in your opening remarks, this is a very human-centered sector, and so you have to really be able to have that human touch to be successful. But we are seeing a real even new types of organizations that we're working with on the employment side. If you look at the Devex job board, and a lot of people I'm talking to here talk about finding their first development job on the Devex job board, which is fun to hear. But now you'll see startups in San Francisco posting jobs. You'll see organizations, social enterprises that are founded in the global south and headquartered there, and they're looking to only hire locally. So there's a lot of disruption in the kinds of employers, but my takeaway is that it's really exciting time to be a professional in development because it's very dynamic, and there's a lot of different ways that you can find your niche, but you have to be willing to learn and evolve. I mean, it's constantly
for sure
changing sector.
Yeah.
So, what you learn today, the technologies today may not be the technologies in 5 years, but being able to adapt, that adaptability, as you say, it really is key.
Exactly, absolutely. Are there any just in terms of like sectors? We cover a lot of them: health, education, agriculture. Are there any sectors that you find when you talk to recruiters that they're really looking for people that have technical knowledge in a specific sector?
Yeah, I mean, I would say health and agriculture seem to be more the forefront in that, and really taking advantage and leveraging and integrating technology into healthcare delivery, agricultural development. Some other sectors are maybe a little bit further behind, but those are two where, and I think in the survey results that was borne out, and that if you work in those areas or monitoring evaluation, big data, that it's really important to be up on tech skills, and looking to hire technologists and people who have very different backgrounds is something that we expect to see more of.
Absolutely. And then I think another thing that came out was, and this again affects every industry, is just the socio-political changes that are happening around the world. And in order to operate in that kind of environment, you need those softer skills. You need to have a discipline, but you also need the softer skills, and you need to stay aware of how those changes are affecting our industry. So people are staying on top of that from a finance perspective, from sort of just a day-to-day operations perspective. But yeah, it's I can't predict that that's going to change anytime soon. So yeah, I think change is the only constant in this industry.
That's great. Well, we do have the results of this survey coming out, I believe, in just a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that if you want to dig into them further. With that, thank you, Pete, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks, Kate.